What if Spider-Man was in Invincible Part 1? I know this has been a kind of like a what if that was asked a few years ago, but I never really wanted to jump into it. But I had a commenter on my commentary post. If you aren't, on my commentary, bro, go on my community, man. My community, I do be posting a lot of or giving a lot of polls saying what do you guys want to see next, blah 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 blah. So like, if you really want me to do a specific what if, and I under that one dude in my comments, I'm going to give you the guts Agami Kai kill what if. I'm going to get it, bro. I have to look into the guts lore though. Give me some time, damn. But well, let's just dive right into this fan fiction. What if Spider-Man Peter Parker was in the Invincible universe alongside Mark Grayson? Let's get into it. So we're not going to focus too much on Mark's story since we already know how Mark's story goes. Mark gets his powers, Mark is training with his dad, and eventually he gets his suit. But we're going to be learning more about how Peter Parker's life is or how his life is going in the Invincible world. Let's dive into it. So we start our story off with Peter Parker, and we get an introduction to his character. Peter is kind of a nerd. It's simple. His peers treat him like kind of crap, and we're going to go in between kind of the comic book version of Peter, or kind of a mixture between Tobey Maguire and Peter Parker. A Peter Parker that's always having a bad life, and once he gets bit by a spider, his life just gets a little better, but he always gets misery at the end. Losing a loved one, losing a romantic partner, even losing a friend. Things happen to Peter Parker, things happen to Spider-Man, and it always is a part of life. Now, let's dive more into Peter's relationships. Peter is actually friends with William in this continuity, and Peter goes to the same school as Mark. Now, Peter going to the same school as Mark is going to be a critical point, and there's also going to be a really good key factor to really show between these characters' depths. Now, I also will be dropping a little bit of, let's just say, street tier vigilante crimes, because we don't really see too much street tier activity happening in the Invincible world. We focus more on the global citywide attacks that Mark handles, because Mark goes toe-to-toe with more bigger guys like the Muller twins and guys that are actually, playing on world domination, or even something as crazy as blowing up a continent or something like that. So something along those lines. Now, we get shown a little bit more of William's character in season 1. William and Peter are close friends, and actually William is a close friend and actually a second cousin to Aunt May. Now, what would happen is they would have been long friends, even childhood friends and cousins. What would happen is they would start to talk, and that night they would have actually figured out that it was a internship that was, given to Peter actually because of his incredible outstanding grades, stats, and performance in his school, and how he was probably the smartest person and kind of a prodigy, to put it simple. Peter was kind of flattered, but William offered to take him or drive him over there since he just got his license. So we see how Peter and William drive over there, and this will happen after school after William says bye to Mark and yada yada yada. Now, him being friends with William, somehow through plot, William would have never introduced Peter to Mark, at least not in person. He would have talked about Peter then and there, but he would never really show his face, or their paths would never cross in person. Now, what would happen? I said it's a lot. Sorry, what would happen? What proceeds to begin is Peter going to the Oscorp internship. What happened? What will proceed to unfold is we see William drops off Peter, saying to be safe and to see you later. William drives off and saying that he'll be back in a few hours, and if he finishes earlier than that, call him. William drives off. We see that Peter walks into the Oscorp laboratory or internship as he sees a couple of familiar faces and hears a couple of familiar names in the Spider-Man universe, like Adamus Joe. I think Adamus Joe. I don't remember his name, but if you know him, you know him. He becomes a certain green fellow. We also get introduced to a younger version of a few familiar faces like Luke Cage and Danny Rand and a few other characters like that. Now we get shown more about Peter's interaction with people. He's a very quirky, very nerdy, and kind of lacking self-confidence type of kid. He throws smirky remarks because if you know like the OG comic books, Peter was it's kind of relatable people that like Peter because Peter was kind of a sort of a slick talker nerd. Like he said, "Oh, really? You're dumb." Like he was kind of a slick talker nerd back in the day. He kind of talked crazy, though, Peter. But what happened is, well, Peter would have proceeded to just talk to everybody in the lab, or everybody would have started to just say hi to him or say hi to each other. Peter would have been walking around, as he would also be taking pictures for photography class as well, since Peter did take photography as a elective or extracurricular. So what happened is Peter would start to take pictures and taking shots, going up to a certain redhead girl in his class. Actually, you know what? A certain blondie, because she actually smart. But oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's a little shade. That's too much shade going to old and reliable Red. But you gotta say you can't lie. Gwen Stacy, that girl though. But we see that Peter is talking to Gwen and asking her if he could take a picture of her for the yearbook, since he was also given an opportunity to take some pictures for the yearbook for this internship, since it was a lot of students from their school that got picked for this internship. So what happened is, well, she would have been more than happy to take pictures. We would see a kind of a sub-tier type of relationship between them, as Gwen thought he was cute, but in a friendly way. But eventually Peter would show her that he is more than he looks. Now, what happened is nothing would have happened yet. Peter wouldn't have had his powers or anything like that. But this would happen, though. This event would change the course of Peter's life in the universe, in the universe of the Invincible world itself. What happened is Peter would have been talking to Gwen, and eventually we would hear noises, commotion, problems happening. Peter would be confused on what's about to go down as they hear a huge crash, and out of nowhere, bullets and lasers start to go flying. We see a few no-name thugs in all black, and one of their leaders pops out, and he is so-and-so Dr. Seismic. Dr. Seismic hired these guys, well, because he had a vendetta against Oscorp. So Dr. Seismic is pretty much just filling up everybody in the room and is telling them that if you move, you get shot. If you yell out, you get shot. And if you try to call somebody, they're going to get blasted to oblivion. So what's going to happen? He has a vendetta against Oscorp. I guess Norman Osborn has some sort of crazy organization and some sort of crazy underground government official stuff happening that Dr. Seismic knows about and he wants to put an end to by destroying the entire lab with the students in it to send a message. What the actual freak? I mean, like, dang, bro. With killing kids for a message is crazy. But we see that Peter is kind of confused and is very much shocked and freaked out. Between this happening, we see out of nowhere a red rush. Out of nowhere, a huge shockwave happens. Dr. Seismic getting blitzed the freak out of as Red Rush arrives, taking down all the thugs. Through this commotion and Red Rush running around, basically breaking sound barriers and all the other stuff, she would have cracked open a exhibit. Genetically modified spiders. The spider would have gotten out, and through the aftermath of the police showing up and them catching all the guys, Peter in the corner and Gwen saying, "Are you okay?" And Peter says, "Yeah, I guess I'm okay." Ah! As we would hear a click. The spider would have bit Spider-Man. It would have bit Peter Parker. We all know who he becomes. We all know who Peter Parker is. So, that's the origin of this universe's Peter Parker. Through the intervention of a certain event that Dr. Seismic was about to go down, and also something going on with Red Rush, Peter would have gotten bit by a genetically modified spider, a radioactive spider basically, and he would have donned his powers, but not just yet. After he would have gotten bit, Peter would have been kind of daisy and woozy. By the time he got back home after saying his highs and lows to Uncle Ben and Aunt May, he would have passed out immediately as soon as he got into his room. Not even waiting for the bed, he would have fell straight to the carpet. Peter would have woken up hours later, and this would take place around Friday. So hours later, around Sunday a.m., around Saturday morning, about like 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, Peter would have woken up, him kind of getting off the ground and feeling weird. Peter would have kind of felt off since he felt like he was lighter for some reason. He would start to walk around, and his body felt healthier. Like all the weight on his body was gone. He felt better than ever. Peter would have looked in the mirror as he would have been shocked at what he saw. He saw muscles, definition, and his glasses, he didn't need them anymore. He thought when he was walking around he had his glasses on somehow, but he had perfect 20/20 vision now. Peter was also maybe like around 2 inches taller now, around the same height as, around the exact same height as Mark Grayson. So yeah, around the same height as Mark. Now Peter would have been very confused on why his body is like this. Peter would have been told or yelled, and Aunt May would have said, "Dinner's ready." No, it's not dinner, bro. It is morning time. Breakfast is ready, Peter. As Peter would have been confused, but him throwing on a baggy hoodie, some sweatpants, and some slides and going downstairs. He would have been eating breakfast with his family, and Uncle Ben would start to talk about the news and about how he was incredibly scared last night after he got the call from Aunt May about you being in that entire shooting at Oscorp and all this other stuff. I'm really sorry about how the internship went, kid, but I'm very much glad you're alive. As he hugs Peter and kisses him on the forehead, saying that I'm glad you're okay, kid. I'm glad you're okay, Peter. And we see a little bit of a wholesome moment between Peter and Ben. And this is when the real deep stuff starts to happen. But before we get into the deep stuff of Peter Parker's life, since we all know I'm going to be throwing in a lot of pain and misery just for kicks, just and giggles. I'm sorry, man. Mark has gone through the gutter so far, a little bit. Not as bad as he eventually will get it in like the later seasons, maybe after the Invincible War, other things like that. But point blank, we will see a lot of pain, misery, and just a lot of critical points and plot points in Peter's timeline, Spider-Man's history in the Invincible world. Now we see that Peter is going to get some milk, as he's out of milk, and Peter was sent to a little bit of an errand run. Peter's walking down the sidewalk, and he's walking, and for no reason, Peter's like in a mid-okay neighborhood. He isn't like in a suburban fenced community like Mark is, but he's in a decent area, kind of a similar neighborhood as Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, in the old timey, like more the grandma like house that Uncle Ben and Aunt May live in. Now, what happened is Peter was started to walk down the road, and him seeing some sort of commotion happening. A person or a driver would have been drunk, and he would have swerved on the sidewalk. Peter would have started to freak out as his body would have started to move on its own, him not even knowing what was happening before he was 6 feet up in the sky, jumping over the car like it was nothing, and falling, or more or less landing perfectly, hitting the Spider-Man post for the first time. Peter is confused and kind of just in pure disbelief that he just pulled that off. Now, in a world of superheroes are the norm, and you can see them basically everywhere, and how supervillains are the norm as well, Peter puts two together, seeing that it was some sort of commotion happening. He felt a huge bite on the back of his neck, saw a dead spider on the floor behind him. He put two together. Oscorp was working on genetically modified animals and spiders in the press conference he watched, because he was pretty much big on Oscorp and a bunch of on a bunch of other organizations that were happening. Now, what happened is, well, Peter would have put two together later that day, trying to figure out what was happening. Before he could actually put two together even more so, after he figured out and went a little bit of a flashback about how Oscorp was working on genetically modified animals and arachnids, insects, reptiles, mammals even. And we'll learn more about those events, and we'll learn a lot more about the inner workings of Oscorp through Peter's kind of spy episodes. Yeah, I will be doing and I will introduce Mark, okay? Don't get me wrong. Mark will be a critical point in this what if, but I'm going to be focusing more on Peter, okay? Like I said at the beginning of the video. This is Peter's introduction in the Invincible world. So we see that Peter is walking down and is kind of confused on what's happening as he starts to hear a ringing, or it kind of dies down to a buzz in the back of his neck. And through this buzz, he closes his eyes as he senses a type of danger coming towards him, like his body and his hairs go up. He gets goosebumps, and Peter feels the irresistible urge to dodge. Peter ducks fast as out of nowhere a huge hubcap goes flying towards him as he hears commotion, and it's another supervillain superhero fight. Good God, can these guys just stop for a day? We see that, well, team is fighting some sort of no-name villain group actually, as they're going toe-to-toe with them. Peter's confused, but also sees the team fighting together and strategizing, and is really just inspired. He's always been inspired by a lot of heroes in the Invincible world, since heroes are the norm in this universe. Peter goes home later that night and puts together a suit. Peter also, before he leaves, he sees bills on the coffee table, eviction notices, money backed up, and he realizes that he needs cash, that he needs to help his family. So, with any teenager that gets superpowers and needs money, he goes to some hustling. Peter signs up for, well, a wrestling gig, and Peter starts to get crazy. Peter, for the next couple consecutive nights, starts to sneak out the house and fight at rings like this, going up against other superpowered beings, since this world is filled with superheroes, right? And supervillains and aliens and all sorts of other things, wizards, demons, everything. So obviously there's some sort of underground fighting ring for these creatures to get money, right? And it makes sense. Who wouldn't want to fight? Who wouldn't want to pay money to see actual super powered people fight until one of them gets passed out, gets brutally beaten up, or dies? Like, I would pay good money to see a real life Superman and Superboy go toe to toe, blow to blow. I would pay good money to see Nightcrawler get the brakes beaten off of him by someone like Colossus, bruh. I would pay good money to see that shit. But what happened is Peter would have been racking up a good name, him calling himself the Man Spider. He would have been breaking up these guys and basically using more of his powers, his just pure power. No web shooters just yet. And Peter using his incredible superhuman strength, and also him learning about his durability, as he can take a lot more hits and a lot more punches. Him taking punches that should kill any normal person and getting back up from them. Now, to make this more, continuity wise, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, he's awesome, right? But he's nowhere near the power scaling and strength of a Viltrumite. But for plot, for the sake of this story, Peter's durability would be freaking insane. Now, he won't be invincible, and he will be more or less the superhuman durability that Rex Flode has. Spoilers for season 3 or season 2. How Rex literally tanked a shot to the freaking dome. Peter could do 10 times that. Peter can take a freaking bomb to the face, because Peter is durable like that, bro. We've seen Peter Parker take bombs to the face, Tobey Maguire Parker at least, take bombs to the face that would disintegrate a normal person. So Peter will be a mixture of Tobey Maguire's durability and comic book Peter Parker's durability, being able to tank gunshots, stab wounds, or anything like that. So Peter can take a beating, maybe even a solid punch to the stomach from a Vulturite and still be up to fight. So Peter will be very durable and may be able to keep up with Mark in terms of durability for the first couple seasons. And by the time he gets to season 3, he won't be on the same level, but I will be giving him a few buffs and a few strength. But so far, Peter's durability is the only thing that's like really off the charts. And you know what? Forget that. He gonna be like starter off Spider-Man strength, speed, and durability. Like the first 2 years of Spider-Man's career type strength, speed, and durability. You know, like Ultimate Spider-Man type stuff. So we see that Peter is fighting these no-named, no real big named superheroes, not superheroes, but super villains and super powered people, and is taking them down one by one, and is learning more about his abilities than he ever could just going down in the streets and fighting thugs. He's going up against actual people that could be on his level and that could kill him in an actual fight if he became a superhero. He racks up a lot of money and is able to pay off some of the bills and stop the house from being taken away, but Uncle Ben gets suspicious. Uncle Ben follows Peter to the, boxing ring one time, and it kind of confronts him after it. Peter says that he's just trying to help the family, and, Uncle Ben says that you can't just be doing this. You can get hurt, Peter. You have power, Peter. And I've always told you, with great power comes great responsibility. I get it, Uncle Ben. I get it, Ben. I get it. But you guys needed help and I wanted to help. I can help. I just need a little training. Uncle Ben comes with a rebuttal saying that you don't need to be fighting some thugs, low-life street trash to learn how to fight. I have a friend that can help you. Peter says, I understand. I appreciate the help, Uncle Ben, but this is happening to me and I want to deal with it how I want to deal with it. At this point, Peter is irrational, he's ignorant, and he's filled with, greed. Peter, for the first time in his life, is stronger than most of everybody he knows. He's faster, he's better. For the first time in his life, he could do whatever he wants, and no one, or nearly nobody, could stop him. Now we see that Uncle Ben just tells him to stay safe, Peter, and you know what? I can't let you do this, Peter. Peter and Uncle Ben go back and forth, as he says that you have a moral obligation to be there for people. You have a moral obligation to do the right thing. Your father was a great man, but he lived by one principle. Not choice, responsibility. Choice is something that you can take. Responsibility is something you can have and you can earn, and that will make you a good man. A great man. Peter gets pissed and lashes out at Uncle Ben, saying, so my dad was so responsible. Why the fuck did he leave me? They go back and forth, they start to cuss, and Peter is just getting madder and madder. As out of nowhere, he punches a metal pipe, and Uncle Ben sighs, saying, okay, Peter, if that's how you want to do it. He walks off, as Peter is kind of regretting his actions of what he said to Uncle Ben. He tries to go after him, but he loses his trail. But a few minutes later, he hears a gunshot. Peter starts to run over there, jumping to building, eventually finding Uncle Ben's body shot. Uncle Ben has a few minutes to live, as Peter tries to get him up, and he yells for people to help him. Get police, get ambulance, someone help, as Uncle Ben is about to die. But before he dies, he says that, I'm sorry, Peter. Your father was a good man, but as his memories start to fade away, Uncle Ben is dying, basically. Peter says, you're gonna be okay, okay? You're gonna be just fine. I don't think I am, I have to tell you something. The things you can do, the power you have, you can be someone great one day or someone incredibly powerful and scary. You have to choose what type of man you are. A man that uses choice over responsibility, or responsibility over choice. Peter, remember this. With great power comes great responsibility. And so you end off with Uncle Ben dying, and Peter being filled with regret, pain, and loss, and more or less him wanting to prove himself and raise himself to that high standard Uncle Ben gave him. To use responsibility to move his actions, to be a good man, be a man that puts others in front of himself, to use responsibility other than choice. So I'll leave it out there, guys. So yeah, I'm sorry you haven't seen this. Peter hasn't gotten the suit yet. He hasn't met Mark yet. But in episode 2 or part 2, we will get introduced more to his interactions with first year or first month Invincible. But we also will be seeing more and more about how Peter will be dealing with the Invincible world and how his first years of being Spider-Man will put a toll on him. Now, he does have a little bit of experience with superpowered people, but not so much to a point where he's going to be a pro once he goes up against people like the Muller twins or anything like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.